like when one of my daughters would say, "Hey, Daddy, you want me to cook you a peach cobbler?" And I was like, "Yes, I do."
Okay. One of the greatest sentences ever uttered. "Hey, Daddy, would you like me to cook you a peach cobbler?" No
right.
father worth their soul is ever going to say no to that daughter.
Exactly.
Let's see. A pie has a complete covering. Does a cobbler have a partial covering?
But as far as cobblers, I would say partial, but I have not thrown one away that was complete. Let's put it that way.
Well, we're not talking about the operational definitions and whether or not reject or fail to reject.
I'm not rejecting a cobbler, so.
You're not rejecting a cobbler. So, what?
That's the problem. That's part of my problem, Eric. I failed to reject the cobbler.
Is anybody hungry? That was Noland White with Eric Landrum talking about peach cobbler, family, and rejecting the null. So I don't know that it gets better than that. This is Garth Neufeld with Psych Sessions, conversations about teaching and stuff. My podcast partner, Eric Landrum, had the opportunity to interview Noland for the second time. So they have a lot to talk about, and we're going to let you get to it. But before we get to that, just a word from a couple of our sponsors who we are very grateful to. Get ready for the new school year with Macmillan Learning's Achieve for Psychology. Achieve for Psychology sets a new standard for teaching by engaging every student and supporting every instructor. Achieve allows instructors to easily integrate assessments, activities, and analytics into teaching. Achieve is offering exclusive digital activities for each title, created by the authors, new goal setting and reflection surveys to check in with students, and a new video collection for introductory psychology with 220 in-demand videos, including classic clips, contemporary footage, and exclusive original content. These features are just a few in Achieve's suite of reports and insights, and another example of how Achieve goes well beyond just delivering first-rate class-to-class course materials. For a preview of Achieve for Psychology, go to macmillanlearning.com/psych sessions. The Psych Sessions podcast is sponsored by STP. That is the Society for the Teaching of Psychology. That's APA Division 2. You can find them at teachpsych.org. The views or product endorsements expressed do not represent the views, support, or endorsements of STP. Psych Sessions is so grateful to have STP as a long-term supporter.
All right. I am here for a very special episode of Psych Sessions. First off, hi, Nolan.
What's up, Eric?
Good to see you. Let's see if I can get the university name right. Georgia College and Affiliated Services Incorporated. I can never get the whole thing correct.
Very close, very close. Georgia College and State University.
Georgia College and State University. Talk about inclusivity, right? We're going to get everybody into that.
Exactly. Our official short name is Georgia College, and it's been that way for more years than I can remember. But we've actually found that a lot of our international students, based on their diplomas and other documentation, it really benefits them to have the in-state university on there, because university has greater meaning or more weight in some places than apparently it does in Georgia. So,
wow. So your marketing folks, not only A, did their homework, but B, did a good job.
Yeah. And so now, although Georgia College it was Georgia College when I was here, back in the late 1800s to when I came back to school.
We're going to do that?
It was Georgia College and State University, but, the official short name has always been Georgia College.
So you mean back in the days when you and I had hair?
Exactly.
Oh my gosh. Wouldn't it be fun to find those pictures when you and I had hair, then Photoshop them together?
Oh man, that would be awesome. my students have been on a hunt for such photos, and I told them that those tablets were crushed a long time ago. So,
well, okay, while we're on this topic, I'm so thankful that Facebook didn't exist when I was
oh
a
my goodness,
teenager.
yes,
Because I do have pictures of me with. By the way, this is going to be a conversation that no one cares to listen to. But we're having fun already, right?
that's right.
I have pictures of me with long, luscious brown hair that no one believes. And occasionally my students in a face-to-face class will go, no way you didn't. And I will dig them out and show them. And they'll go, who is that? And I'll go, that's me, darn it. And it's really fun that, students don't think that we're humans sometimes.
Exactly. I showed a photo that a friend of mine that was in the master's program here with me sent one of my students several weeks ago. And we had a small faculty meeting, and I showed the photo to one of my colleagues. They said, who's that? I said, somebody used to go here. And Lee Gillis, my chair, who you know very well, said, oh yeah, I taught him. And I had to go back and tell that colleague that you were looking at an old photo of somebody with hair and a full beard, not as full and as robust as yours, but a full beard and long hair. So
this makes much more sense, this beard, in a climate that has 14% humidity than it does in a climate with 94% humidity.
Oh, definitely.
Let's just
I know
make that clear.
Yes. There are hot places everywhere, but I was sharing with one of our friends, Drew Christopher, earlier this week, looking back just from June and July with the heat index getting up to about 117 and at least being in the teens multiple days. So 90 plus humidity is not fun. So
yeah, it's the humidity, not the heat. Dry heat, wet humidity is not pleasant. I grew up with wet in the Midwest, and when it was 90 degrees outside, 90% humidity, it was miserable.
Well, I tell people all the time, when you're as large as I am, it's always a damp heat. It doesn't matter.
Okay, but here's the thing, Nolan. You're not as large as you used to be.
I'm larger.
What are you missing?
I am smaller in some ways, but other ways, unfortunately, have ballooned back up for various reasons, but not to my max, thank goodness.
Well, but I mean, COVID, I think, has a lot to do with that for a lot of people.
Yeah. COVID.
Being more sedentary and just, not being able to get out as much and, restarting good habits that people had before COVID and all that. So.
Oh, yeah. And I had that compounded by back surgery and then knee problems, and then a very poor resolve, like when one of my daughters would say, hey, Daddy, you want me to cook you a peach cobbler? And I was like, yes, I do. So.
Okay. One of the greatest sentences ever uttered in the state of Georgia. Hey, Daddy, would you like me to cook you up a peach cobbler? No right. Father worth their soul is ever going to say no to that daughter.
Exactly.
Now, we don't have to go down this rabbit hole too far. Let's see. A pie has a complete covering. Does a cobbler have a partial covering?
I think it depends.
Tart has no covering?
I can't speak to tarts, but as far as cobblers, I would say partial, but I have not thrown one away that was complete. Let's put it that way.
Well, we're not talking about the operational definitions and whether or not we accept or reject the null hypothesis or accept or fail to reject or fail to reject. Let me get the terminology right. I'll edit that mistake out, for the record later on.
Well, either way, I'm not rejecting a cobbler. So
you're not rejecting a cobbler. So, what?
That's the problem. That's part of my problem, Eric. I failed to reject the cobbler.
This is going to be the first Psych Sessions episode that really talks nothing about psychology at all. And I'm good with that because we're having fun.
Oh,
hot July day. Is there any flavor of cobbler that you would reject?
I haven't found one yet, but no, most of my preferences are definitely blackberry and peach. Recently had a pecan cobbler, which was pretty awesome.
One of my father's favorite pies was a pecan pie. Not a pecan pie.
Well, it depends on what you're talking about. Now, I grew up across the street from a pecan orchard, but I love pecan pie. So,
okay, I'm sorry. I need to roll the tape back. That went by a little bit too fast. So, can you differentiate where you put the emphasis on the syllable, please?
no, I can't, and I don't know why I learned it that way, but I did. I grew up across the street from a huge pecan orchard. We had pecan trees in our yard. As you can see, I already changed it there. But depending on if it was pie, cobbler, or the orchard, it just tends to change. So,
okay, very, very good. Where were we? It was me, you, and Danae Hudson. We were at some conference in some city, and I'll tell you, the person who does this the best, bless his freaking heart, is Regan Gurung. He'll remember a conversation, and he'll remember the city he was in and what he was eating. Bless his heart.
That's impressive.
It is impressive. It really ticks me off. Anyway, me, you, and Danae were somewhere, and Danae and I were eating regular food. We were having, like, I think, chips and salsa with margaritas.
It was me, you, and Susan, I think.
Susan Noland? I'm sorry.
Susan Noland is.
That's It's the same thing where we were walking along the street and we saw the sign for the blowout.
Yes.
We had to be informed of what that was.
Exactly. The same one, where Susan said, oh, it's just, right down the street, and like 40 minutes later as we're walking up to this establishment, so.
Oh, yeah, she does that to me too, by the way. Oh, it's just right here. We can walk. Well, for her in Jersey City, New Jersey, a short walk is 40 minutes.
Right.
For a guy like me. But anyway, we were there and Susan and I were enjoying really delicious, savory, fat-filled foods. And I think, what did you get? Like some banana chips that had been air dried and seasoned with salt-free seasoning? What's going on?
No,
do you remember that? You ordered?
I think I asked for sliced cucumbers or something. So
yeah,
which is really not. It's probably maybe only the second or third time that's ever come out of my mouth to even say that. So
yeah, I mean, it was impressive, and I remember sitting in the chair, and I remember this distinctly. I dialed 9, then 1, then 1, and put my finger on enter in case I fell over, so that I would dial. I mean, and good on you, really, seriously, for doing that. But and you had the willpower to, man, we were just chips and salsa and queso and a margarita and a beer, and I'll have water and I'll have cucumber slices with a non-salt seasoning, please. Thanks.
It's okay. Around here, I just take my own bag of pork rinds into the restaurant. And that's what I use if I'm not using chips. So,
yeah, I think I had a pork rind phase at one point. I think I've lost it. I used to like the barbecue ones.
Yeah. I got hooked on mustard. I like the mustard. Also the vinegar flavored. So
mustard is where I part ways. I got to tell you, even though I grew up around Chicago, and mustard is a big deal on hot dogs there, I'm not a big fan of mustard. Actually, I'm not a fan at all of mustard, I have to say.
Gotcha. I can respect
Think
that.
about bitterness. I don't go for the bitterness of beer or mustard or even wines that are bitter. I don't care for them.
Nah, makes sense.
So I should probably try to, at some point at the 11-minute mark of this, connect it to psychology, but maybe I'll stay in the food theme. So you shared with me before we hit record that you've been on both a vacation and a trip this summer. Good for you. You got out of the hometown. And for our listeners who might not quite put together who Noland White is, among many accomplishments in his career, he is a co-author with Sandra or Sandra?
It depends. As she says,
is it pecan or pecan?
Sandra K. Cicerelli or Sandy to her friends. So,
well, I'm going to say Sandra K. Then. You can say Sandy.
She would prefer you said Sandy. So,
well, I would love to meet her someday. But Dr. Cicerelli and Dr. White, what the main book? What's the 6th, 7th edition? Where are you at?
Yep, 6th edition came out couple years ago. The brief edition followed shortly thereafter.
Don't you have briefer, and you've got probably modules, and you probably got the loose leaf edition, a Canadian edition?
Not quite. Not
no?
quite. We've got the comprehensive, then we've had
There you
the
go.
brief book. We'll be working on 7E starting probably in January. So
7E, and do you have like a high school edition? Do you have like an AP Psych edition?
we have both, and I am very pleased to announce that, I guess it was last week, the new Indian edition was released. And we had a panel,
cool.
and in fact, came back from vacation to be part of panel for the release of the Indian edition.
So I'm going to tread lightly because I don't want to make this mistake. Would it be in Hindi?
My copy is in English, but I can tell you.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
sorry. Okay.
yeah.
But it was prepared for an Indian audience.
Yes. Yes.
Gotcha. Okay. So you and Dr. White and your families, we were talking about food a couple minutes ago, got together for dinner over the summer.
Dr. Cicerelli and our families got together. So it's one of the good things. We go down to Panama City Beach. Sandy and her family live in Panama City. And so as part of our vacation, we take at least an evening to get together and enjoy a nice meal, some time together, and just sit around and talk and enjoy each other's company. Because most of the time during the year, it's via Zoom, email, and, occasionally getting on the phone just to talk.
That is great. And so does your wife and her spouse understand the epic undertaking that it is to be collaborators on the Intro Psych textbook?
I think so, Eric, because they've had to support us all this time. As you know, there's no way any one individual can take on such a task without having huge amounts of support, whether it be from family, friends, colleagues, and that's not even talking about from the publisher side. So both Joe and Leah have to, they are very cognizant of what's been required because they've seen what's been involved the entire time.
And even though I would imagine they both have their own careers and they both have their own interests, they are both beneficiaries of their spouses, you and Sandra, having this great success with a book, as well as the, academic success, career success, and financial success. So I know there's probably sacrifice on their part of not seeing a spouse as much during those revision seasons, but there's also some other successes that they're the fruit of the tree, so to speak.
Yep, I agree.
Yeah, good. Is it, without getting too personal, does it start off in shop talk and then the family says, "Oh, stop talking about chapter 16. It's fine. Let's talk about the latest thing we're watching on Netflix," or how?
Actually, I think it's the opposite, Eric, because we've gotten to where there's a very nice sushi restaurant that we will go to. And I would say 90% of the conversation, if not 95% of the conversation, is based on what we're eating, what we're enjoying, just catching up on what the kids have been doing. And then it's like, oh yeah, there's that thing that we said we talk about. Well, I'll email you later. I'll call you next week. So
and I will delete this part if you need me to. Does the publisher pay for any part of the trip or the dinner, or is it the two of you pay for it? So you're not obligated you're not obligated. Hey, we got to talk about this for 5 seconds, so the publisher pays for it.
No.
Okay.
We have done this just on our own.
Oh, that's really sweet. That is awesome. What was I? Oh, I had something I was going to ask. So, you have 3, right?
Yes.
3 kids. And how about Sandra?
Sandy has 2.
Yeah, you're going to keep calling her Sandy. I'm going to keep calling her Sandra. You know that, right? And what are the ages of yours, if you don't mind?
Yeah. My oldest actually is getting ready to have her birthday in 2 weeks? So she is getting ready to be 24. My middle one will be 20 in August, and my youngest just turned 17.
Okay, 24, 20, and 17. How about her on her side?
I would guess, I should know this, but I don't, but I would guess mid-20s and upper 20s.
So all of I'm going to call them adult children. I mean, they're not kids.
Yep.
They're adult children. They're adults. They have the wherewithal to get it of what their two parents have accomplished. They likely have been to college. They understand college. They've seen college textbooks. They get it. What, to some extent. I mean, to some extent they get it, right?
Right.
Yeah, I hope they realize what a big deal it is. You know, I hope your students at Georgia College and State University. I hope, and I hope Lee Gillis does this to you every now and again, walks into your classroom or pops in on your Zoom and says, you all know who Noland White is? Because I know you all to know that you're not going to do this. I've had this conversation with Jane Hallen, and I've actually had this conversation with Wayne White, who I talked to recently for the podcast. And I've asked, do your students know who you are? And the answer is always no. Because the people in our world who we love, like you and Drew Christopher, like you've mentioned, and the folks that I've mentioned, they're never going to walk into the classroom and go, I'm so-and-so, I'm this. When I was talking to Wayne about this, I said, do your students even connect that you're the Wayne Whiten, who's the author of the Wayne Whiten, the textbook you're using in Intro Psych? And I go, yeah, I think they do. Are you sure? And I'm sure that you use Cicerelli and White when you teach Intro Psych.
I do.
Do you think your students connect? They
do sometimes. You know, years ago when we were still using printed textbooks, I'd have a student, in the class, and I can still remember sitting there last week of classes, and I see her looking down at her textbook. She looks up at me with a kind of quizzical look. She looks a bit down at her textbook. Then she looks back up at me and she raises her hand and she goes, Dr. White? I said, yes. She goes, are you the same Dr. White that's the J. Noland White on our textbook? I said, yes, that's me. Okay.
Oh my gosh.
No.
Yeah. It would have to be, I know you well enough to know that you're probably one of the most humble souls on the planet. But you've got to crack up inside when an intro psych student might complain to you and says, that test item was unfair. You don't know what you're talking about. And you're going inside, I'm the author of the book. And I might have been the author of the test item file item. Or I certainly reviewed it or had a team of people reviewing it for me,
Well, like I think it was year before last, I had one of my student opinion forums. The student said something about some positive aspects of the class. The one thing I would say, though, is that sometimes the examples he shares in class they sound like they came straight out of the textbook.
Oh, that's funny. Oh, my God. Who was it? I think, was it Dave Myers?
Yeah, Dave Myers talks about how he put all of his best stuff in the book.
Right, and in the instructor's manual. So
yeah.
When he taught the course, he struggled for a couple of years to come up with things that didn't duplicate what he's already given students.
Yeah.
And someone else had done that too before him. I forget who it was, textbook author in the 80s, wrote about that challenge as well. You pour everything into what you give away and sell in the supplements and in the book, what you sell in the book. Then all of a sudden, as the instructor, you struggle to what you're going to do.
Right.
Oh my gosh. All right. Well, we don't have to talk about the book the whole time, but I think it's interesting to listeners. I know it's interesting to me to talk about it and to, it's a real accomplishment. What's that?
Speaking of books, I'm holding a copy here of something that was actually delivered the week before I went on vacation, or maybe it was 2 weeks before on vacation. And I'll be honest, I had a lot more goals for vacation. I actually didn't open it while I was there. But Everyday Applications of Psychological Science, Hacks to Happiness and Health by R. Eric Landrum, Regan A.R. Garung, Susan A. Noland, Maureen A. McCarthy, and Dana S. Dunn.
All right.
Congratulations.
Well, first off, thank you. First off, will you hold that book up?
Yes, I will.
You know what? Here's the thing. And by the way, we're not recording the video of this. That's the first time I've seen the book.
That's amazing.
I haven't seen it yet. Thank you for showing me the physical book. I know what the cover was going to look like,
Yeah.
but I haven't gotten my copies yet. So thank you for mentioning it. Thank you for showing me that it exists.
Not only does it exist, I've gotten into parts of the book, and I actually went ahead and ordered the Kindle edition too. So I'll have flexibility in my ability to tap into all of the expertise and just the wonderful writing style that this collective has offered.
Okay, that's very kind of you. That's very kind of you. All right.
Well, it's also the truth, and you know this. So, and we can speak about you being humble as well, but this is an amazing collective, and just the way y'all have taken, psychological science and put it in a format and done so in a manner that is not aimed directly at any given student population. It's just for, hey, I'm an individual. I want to learn a little bit more about psychology. And I think y'all have done so in a very worthwhile manner.
I appreciate that. So let's talk about two things. Talk about the book, and then we'll talk about the humble crap. All right. So let's do that. So the interesting thing about that book, and by the way, for folks who are listening, this was not a setup. I had no idea he was going to do this. And when I turn off the microphone, I'm going to tell him I'm a little pissed at him. But for now, I'm going to act like I'm happy about it. You are a turd. We'll edit that part out because you're not. The idea, and you've already said it really nicely, what would you want to take away? I mean, what could psychological science, which has a lot to offer, that's overwhelming, what could you take away in a practical sense? What would you want your mom and dad to know about it who aren't psychological scientists? And could we write it in a way that is digestible? So that's why it has endnotes. It doesn't have in-text citations. We give you all the breadcrumbs to all the science, but it doesn't have to be Dorelli & White 2022 in parentheses in text. We like that as scientists to read it, but if a common person, educated citizen is reading it, they don't have to have that, but we can provide it. We can provide the breadcrumbs. And plus, the one person writing it always has one slant or one perspective, and that can be a good one. But 5 people writing it, you get multiple perspectives and multiple points of view. And plus, it's an outstanding group of people. Every single person in that group has been a president of Division II of the American Psychological Association. They're all award-winning teachers. And so
many of y'all, Charles Brewer award-winning teachers.
Yeah, I think almost all of them have been. And if they haven't been, they probably will be at some point. And so before I end that, I have to give credit to Regan, because that book has been in cooking for about 10 years.
Really?
Yeah, it took a long time. It was signed with a different publisher at first. We got our rights back and went to Routledge, who it's published with. And even though I'm listed as first author, I gave up on it a long time ago. And Regan would go, "How's it going, Eric? What's the next step? When do you think we'll get to it?" Very gently, very professionally, very friendly, but give a dog a bone. He would not give up on that thing. I gave up on it way before he did. And I actually said many times, let's flip the first and second author order, because you have really stepped up here. And he kept saying, no, it was your original idea. It was your original idea. It was your original idea. I couldn't talk him into flipping me. So that's kind of how it came to fruition. So I'm glad it did. And like
I said, from what I've read so far, and I have not as far into it as I'd like to be, but I've already had several ideas besides, y'all being able to present this information that's, that can be digested, like you said, by most anyone. My mind is thinking, besides being a resource for whether it be intro psych or psych of adjustment, but I could also see a deep dive into these topics, following those breadcrumbs, following those trails for a senior seminar class. Okay, right. And I'm looking at this from an academic perspective, because that's what I do most of the time. But while I was reading it, I'm sitting there thinking, not only was this, like you said, a good resource from lower level classes, but I could really see a senior seminar going much deeper into every single one of these practical areas.
Yeah, it could be exactly a capstone class. It was not, I suppose someone could use it it's not an intro psych replacement.
No.
I suppose it could be used as a supplement. I mean, I don't want to talk anybody out of sales, but here's the thing. We Susan Noland is also a textbook co-author.
Exactly.
With Susan Hockenberry. And she has a non-compete. So she couldn't be a co-author on a book that's going to directly compete with a 16-chapter intro psych book. So that book by design could not be that thing. So we didn't write it in that way. So a book that has essentially 6 mini chapters that's 136 pages long that cost $24.95 retail is not usually thought of as a substitute for or a full-blown intro psych. Like Cicero and White, it wouldn't substitute for that.
I could also see it depending on how, like one of the things we're doing right now is we're really focusing on our freshman seminar class. And we are using a wonderful text by two of the people that have already been mentioned, Jane Hallinan and Dana Dunn, for it. But I could also see this as a recommended reference, a recommended title for that class as well. So that book by Jane and Dana is a really good book. And I've looked at the first and the second edition of it, and it's very good. So agree fully. So.
Yeah, absolutely. So let me come back to the thing that made me uncomfortable. And you and I have never had this conversation before, but I've had this conversation with others before. And it involves Jane Hallinan, and she's heard me talk about this on other podcasts before. And she pulled me aside, and she's a dear friend of mine, and I think a dear friend of yours as well.
Definitely.
And you may know where I'm going with this, but she pulled me aside, I'm going to say 10 years ago. We were at some conference somewhere talking, and someone like you just gave me a compliment like that you just did, which was very kind, very sweet, very thoughtful. And I did the thing that I would normally do, which is I deflected. I think it was publicly. I can't remember where it was. And I said something like, well, I thank you for I appreciate your kind words about that award. Apparently no one else applied for it, or thank goodness they scraped the bottom of the barrel, or the committee felt so, I made some sort of self-deprecating remark, because people often do that. They feel uncomfortable getting compliments. They feel uncomfortable being the spotlight. I do. I think you do too, when you get the compliments, when you get the spotlight. And so Jane pulls me aside. And we're somewhere private. And she says, Eric, you got to stop doing that. You got to stop deflecting the compliments, because if I take the time to compliment you about something that you've done and you deflect it and say, oh, they scraped the bottom of the barrel, or, oh, no one else applied for the award. In essence, that could be interpreted as that you're demeaning me. You're taking my compliment and you're devaluing it, and you're devaluing my opinion of you. I said, Jane. Oh, crap, Jane. You know what? When you say it that way, you're right.
Exactly.
So that's,
of course she's right.
Of course she's right. She's Jane
Hallinan.
I don't even think we have to say she's right. We just have to say she's Jane.
That's right.
She's Jane. She's Jane again. So that's why when you were being very complimentary about that book and you're leading up to it and you're seeing all these nice things, I have to sit there and take it.
You can make an impact with PsychLearn. PsychLearn from the American Psychological Association is a complete all-digital instructional resource for psychology courses. PsychLearn drives deeper engagement than traditional printed textbooks, immersing students in multi-dimensional learning experiences with engaging content for practice and formative assessment. Structured around applied cognitive science, PsychLearn helps students gain confidence in their understanding of foundational concepts and builds toward critical learning outcomes. Research methods, introduction to social psychology, and statistics for the behavioral sciences are now available on the PsychLearn platform,
with more content to come. Please visit pl.apa.org/sessions to find out more. That's plcyclern.apa.org/sessions to find out more.
And I can't say, well, we got lucky. There are no other books published, or, I have to sit there because I'm listening to this Jane voice in my ear say, don't demean his compliment. Don't deflect it. Don't spin around and say, well, you've got a really good book too, right? Don't put on the deflector shield. And this is it. It's really hard for me. And I think, I don't know, isn't it hard for you?
It's definitely hard. And, and talking about conversations at conferences, I can remember doing a presentation at APA where you caught me on the way out and you kind of grabbed me by the elbow and made eye contact and said, you did a really good job there, don't you? And I believe I said, thank you, which is hard for me just to say thank you. And then I think probably we started talking about something else. So,
well, and people have individual differences, and people are introverts and extroverts. But for me, for whatever reason, you can compliment my work. Like if you tell me that journal article was really well written, I'm okay with that. I don't have a problem with that. But if you tell me I did a really good job, that makes me super uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like I don't want the attention, but it's okay if you give my work attention. And I haven't had enough therapy hours to figure out why that is the way that is.
I think, in some ways, though, you and I are in a similar boat. I like the idea of something I've done being known and being known as that it was worthwhile. But I often have difficulty when it's attributed to me. So,
yeah. And, we are both very fortunate, very privileged individuals to be fair to the listener. We're both white males. And so we've had a lot of privilege our way, worked hard, but also had a lot of privilege. And so I think that's worth acknowledging. So, part of it came our way through circumstance, and part of it came our way through hard work. And so it's always been, I've always been awkward about it. And, I've told people the shortcut to me is I take my work very seriously. I just don't take me seriously.
Yeah, I like that.
So you can laugh at me all you want. If you want to make a joke about me, get in line, because I got 20 of them ahead of you. But if you want to criticize my work, that's okay too. But that's where I want to have a conversation. Like I got, 10, 12 years ago, someone in the literature commented in like a discussion section on my work, something I had published, and had said something slightly critical. Didn't rip me a new one, but said something slightly critical. And I was thrilled because that meant someone was reading it, someone was processing it, and someone was actually paying attention to it and found something to be improved and maybe a minor flaw. And I wasn't offended at all. It was like, in the big literature, when you see these learning researchers going back and forth, Rescorla Wagner and all these people going back and forth, it's like, that is cool. They're arguing the items of the day. And I'm not that person. But, when somebody in the careers in psychology literature took me out to the baby woodshed and said, you shouldn't do that, it was like, okay, maybe I shouldn't. Maybe I can justify it. Maybe I can justify it better. But thanks for noticing that I'm out near the woodshed. That was all right.
Right. Whether it be in the classroom with student opinion reviews, or whether it be like in a publication, that's one of those things I think over time, being able to see those reviews, each one, okay, why did the person make this comment? Why was this observation made? What can I take away from it? And is it useful? Is it not? All of them are useful, but is it something I can implement? And I think that that's something over the years I've definitely have gained greater ability to benefit versus just, well, it's obvious they were biased, so I'm not even going to pay attention to that. And I think I do a better job of that now than I ever did before. It still bothers me. Of course it does. If I have a student opinion forum where I know somebody is speaking an untruth, it bothers me. When I see somebody take something out of context or see something in a way that I didn't see it, I try not to take offense. I try to put myself in that context. As long as it's not a straight up alternate truth, then there's something I can take away from it.
Yeah.
And I think I do a better job of that now than I did, 20 plus years ago when I first started in the classroom. So in some ways, I still see myself as that developing academic and always trying to do better, whether it be in the classroom, anything I'm doing in my teaching, my research, with my students, continual learning process.
How influential, I'm going to bring it back to textbooks. Sorry about that. How influential are those reviewer comments these days? I mean, I know a little bit about when trying to launch a book, but y'all are in 6th, 7th, 8th edition of different places and different versions of your book. When you send chapters out or book revisions out, or you want to float a new idea, how important are those reviewers in your process?
I think it's kind of like the session that you and Sue did at APA, and then we did another one at WPA, where, you had Dave Myers, you had Susan Noland, you had all these, textbook authors, and we had the panel, and you and Sue asked us all these questions, and then you opened it up to the audience. And some of the same points, like Dave Myers, I remember saying something about the one reviewer that had this one aspect of their field that they were saying was underrepresented in his text. And he gave a very elaborate, very elegant answer, that you can't address every single little thing. We tried to address as comprehensively as possible. And then when it was opened up to audience questions, there was one individual that asked a question very similarly. Why is this one aspect of my field not in your text? And so I think over the years, I think I do a better job of being able to recognize what can and can't be and what does have a place and what the place is. I think especially as we've moved from kind of like the hard copy in front of a student format to the hard copy, and now you go online and you do some activities and homework, to now having a digital first mentality, like Danae and Brooks' text that started off digital as a digital native. I think in some ways you have to maintain that open ear, because students are interacting with our text, instructors are interacting with our text in ways that they didn't do, 4 editions ago, 5 editions ago. So in some ways, I'd say it's more critical, especially on usability and features and those things that, help engage the student and help support the instructor. I think we're always probably going to have that voice in some of our reviews that, why don't you cover X? Now, you cover everything else, but you don't cover X.
Right.
So I think it kind of comes in waves as far as those topics go. But I think the user experience is very critical.
Does your editor ever panic about that? Like, you've just gotten some long letter from Dr. Joe Smith at XYZ University, and they go off on, how come you didn't include the neuroregulation of dopamine receptors in monkeys? How could that not be in the neuroscience chapter? And they come to you and Sandra, and you go, just breathe, or do they just trust y'all and you go, look, it's not that important. We got this.
I think, Cindy and I have been pretty fortunate in that regard. Now, of course, we've had those letters over the years, and I don't think the editor had that kind of reaction maybe as much as I did. It's like, oh crap, what did I miss? Well, how could I not know about this?
That sounds like
And I think that I still will have that initial like, oh crap, but it's maybe taper down just a tad, so.
Okay. Nolan, is it fun? Is it fun for you to be an intro psych textbook author? Is it all things considered, I think most outsiders looking in go, gosh, the money must be good. Well, I've talked to enough intro psych textbook authors to know that sometimes they've done the calculations, and when you're around the second or third revision, they will tell you it feels like it's about $2 or $3 an hour when you're early in your career. So I'm not asking you about money, obviously, but has it been fun? Worthwhile?
It has been a blast. It's funny about the money thing. There's been a couple of authors here at Georgia College that have had very successful textbooks, and some of those have been textbooks in very focused fields where there are only 3 primary textbooks or 4 primary textbooks.
Wow.
And so that's a lot different than the field of intro psych, where there are, I don't know, how many intro psych textbooks would you guess are out?
I think there are maybe 40 mainstream across all the big publishers. And I think there's about 100 other mom and pop, self-published and off the main drag. Yeah. I think there's probably 125 intro psych books out there easily.
Yeah. So much larger pool. So, but nonetheless, to me, intro psych is my favorite class. And so for me, having, being blessed, having the good fortune, that little bit of luck that you and I have talked about before, to be involved with Sandy on this book, it truly has been an amazing experience, because, every single day I'm reading something and I'm thinking, okay, am I going to use this in class? I'm going to use this in the textbook. Am I going to use it in both? And so for that regard, how can I use this in my other classes? So it's not like I read everything, focused on the textbook. It's just like, it's a constant, it's almost like being in the toy store, and it's like, okay, I want that. I want that. I want that. And one of the best things that's been as far as working with Sandy is like, okay, I want to add the Kung Fu grip to it. And they go, okay, yeah, you can add the Kung Fu grip, and that's been truly amazing.
The Kung Fu grip. So did you get a special edition printed with like a textured cover? Is that the closest thing you can get to a Kung Fu grip?
I would think so.
Did you, when rock stars published their first album, when they've been poor for a while and, they have their first platinum album, interviewers will all often ask them, what did you do with that first batch of money? Did you buy your parents a home, or did you buy yourself a car? What was the first splurge? And the money index is not the same, I think, for a first album versus the first royalty check that passed up that you might have had advance towards future royalties. But, the first one that you and your wife went, wow, I'm kind of glad I did this, And again, I don't want
that first non-negative check, you mean? So
thank you. Okay, that is the best way to say it. The first non-negative check where, your wife went, you told me this might happen. And, quoting you in your language, gosh, golly, it did happen. Because I know you wouldn't swear as a Southern gentleman. I would swear as a Northerner, as a Yankee. But
I slip, unfortunately, too much.
Well, we'll pray for you.
Thank you.
So, was there a splurge? I mean, did you upgrade your car, or build on an addition to the house? Again, we're in the none of my business department, but No, I'm thinking back. I think, probably the first one is like, okay, let's go out for pizza. It's like, it's been some time back, but I have had good fortune since then. And so being able to take care of things like trying to help my children go through college, if they choose to go through college, without having any significant debt, being able to go on a vacation at least once a year. I feel, we talked earlier about having privilege. The fact that I get to go on vacation is a privilege, as, working with different populations over the years. Like I can remember working at YDC here, which is Youth Development Campus, or in other terms, teen prison.
And I can remember doing a sleep hygiene group, was working with a group of the residents, trying to help them learn how to do a little bit of relaxation. We wouldn't have called it mindfulness then, but we'd call it that now. But just trying to help them learn how to control their bodies and see the relationship between their mind and their behavior. And I took out some of my biofeedback equipment. I was helping them see how what you think is affecting your body. And I talked about going on. I said, think about a peaceful place for you. Would that be the mountains or would that be the beach? And I had a group of young males look at me, and the majority of them like, I haven't been out of my county before I came to this place. And so I realized that, just the ability of taking a vacation is truly, a privilege compared to some. So it's been things like that. And
I mean, that's a very dramatic story. I even think of some of my students I've worked with at Boise State over the years, even research assistants who I wanted, and they had worked with me and done research and done it to such an extent that we could go to, some years I've taken them to the Midwestern Psychological Association in Chicago, and sometimes I've taken them to the Rocky Mountain, which goes to different cities, sometimes Denver, Salt Lake, whatnot. And I've had multiple occasions in my past where a student was excited about that and said, A, I've never been out of Idaho. And B, I've never been on an airplane.
Yep.
And they were excited for that. And it was part privilege, maybe part financial, but maybe part just had never had the opportunity afforded to them.
Right.
So whether it's those young men and women that you might have been working with mindfulness, or first gen college students or low income college students who had opportunities to do research, it's a really good thing to remind ourselves that if we've had good fortune, to pay it forward.
Definitely.
Nolan, I've kept you with Internet Interruptus. I've kept you over an hour. As you knew we were coming up to this chance to talk, was there anything that you had in mind that I want to make sure I talk about X? Have we covered X?
I think we've covered X, because my main goal was just having the benefit of being able to see you and have a conversation with you.
Well,
there's been too much time in between face to face. Now, granted, we're doing this via video and it's not quite the same. And I look forward to the next time we're in the same physical location, sharing space and having conversation.
And whether you're eating chips and salsa or cucumbers, whether we're walking past billboards about blowouts that we don't understand, that would be delightful. I'm going to do this carefully, and I may have to edit this out. I want to thank you for being a supporter of Psych Sessions. You have been very kind to us, and you have been supportive of Garth and I in our efforts, and thank you very much for that. And if you need me to edit that out, I will.
No, I appreciate that, and I will follow your lead. When earlier you said thank you, I will simply say you're welcome.
Isn't that difficult? It is so hard to deflect or to flip it and say, no, thank you for doing this. Well, no, thank you for doing this. It's so hard to not do that. I got to figure that out or just deal with it. Anyway.
Well, when you figure it out, let me know. So
that'd be the next, that's the book that you and I should write.
There you go. There's the book.
That's the book. And that'd be like a 20-pager, but we charge $100.
There you go.
Retail. I think people might buy that one. That would be good. Well, Nolan White from Georgia College and State University. Sorry, I just have. Thank you, my friend, for joining me today. I truly appreciate it.
Eric, it was a pleasure as always, and thank you very much.
You bet.